the reason really to me that it's important for us to know about this and actually to access it is because of our soul plan. Because before we embodied, we thought, what patterns do I want to complete and really understand, learn, grow, and complete? We often call those karmic patterns. Or again, who do I want to support? Who do I want to, have as a significant partner? Or who might my parents be? What do I want to learn from them? What ancestral lineage do I want to be born into? Because there's energy in that lineage.
Hello, and welcome back to Seek the Joy podcast. Happy Seek the Joy Tuesday. I'm your host, Sydney Weiss, and on the podcast today, we are diving headfirst into the Akashic Records. I can't believe I've been doing this podcast for almost 4 years. Next month, will be 4 years, which is so exciting, and I can't wait to share next week's episode with you. But I can't believe I've gone 4 years and I haven't had an episode on the Akashic Records yet. So I'm really excited for this one. And Lisa Barnett joins me today for this conversation, and she is an international best-selling author of From Questioning to Knowing, 73 Prayers to Transform Your Life, and the Infinite Wisdom of the Akashic Records. And her third book, Awaken to Your Life Purpose, Understanding Your Soul Plan, will be available this fall, so stay tuned for that. She's also the founder of the Akashic Knowing School of Wisdom, where she has taught thousands of students worldwide to access personal soul wisdom and guidance to transform their life, working directly with their own personal Akashic record keepers. She's got more than 20 years of experience in spiritual healing, so I honestly can't imagine having this conversation with anyone else. We dive into really everything you need to know about the Akashic Records, from what they are, how they can help us, how to access your records, the record keepers, what it feels like when you're accessing your records. I mean, I had so many questions for Lisa, and she just answered them all. We talked about how the Akashic Records can help us access and understand our soul plan, why our souls come to Earth. We talk about soul contracts and how our past lives affect our present life. And just wait until you hear just how many past lives we all actually have, like on average. It's going to blow your mind. Lisa shares with us her spiritual journey, when she received the calling to bring the Akashic Records to others, and why she loves teaching others to access their own records. Plus, Lisa shares with us what the Akasha really wants us to know about what it is we've been experiencing on a global, collective, community-wide level. She shares resources to help us learn how to access our own Akashic records, and just so much more. One of the reasons why I do this podcast is because I really want you to be able to live a happier, more joyful, and just ease-filled life. And so that's why I'm so happy to share that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. The last year and a half, there is no doubt it's been difficult, and that's why I think now more than ever, it's important that we have reliable resources that we can turn to, and that's where BetterHelp comes in. So this is how it works. BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. It's easy and free to change counselors if you don't think the person you're matched with is a good fit, and this service is available for people worldwide too. BetterHelp also offers a broad range of expertise in their counselor network, so you'll get timely and thoughtful responses, and you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions too. So, as a listener of Seek the Joy podcast, you will get 10% off your first month by going to BetterHelp.com/seekthejoy. Join over 1 million people taking charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/seekthejoy. The link will also be included in our show notes. Lisa really teaches simple tools, and she shares so many of them in today's new episode to really empower all of us to find greater fulfillment, happiness, abundance, and health. And she helps you align with your soul path, understand your soul contracts, and complete your karma and vows through diving into your Akashic records. And I took so much from this conversation with Lisa, but more than anything, I think it really solidified this knowing and understanding for me that we're really here to learn and grow, and we do so through different experiences. And we're this infinite soul that is embodied in this human experience right now in this lifetime. And so understanding your purpose is really about tapping into your own soul's plan. And what a beautiful way to do that through the Akashic Records. So Lisa, thank you so much for such a wonderful conversation. I'm so excited. As always, really, I'm always excited, but in this week in particular, I'm super excited to hear what you think about this one. So make sure to join the conversation on our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere. No matter where you're tuning in, hit follow so that you never miss an episode. And I just know you guys are going to love this one, and make sure to come back next week for our 4-year celebration anniversary episode. I've got some big news that I'm dropping, so make sure to stay tuned for that. And without further ado, let's dive into this one, all about the Akashic Records and how your soul really has a plan, with Lisa Barnett. What I love so much about your work, I mean, obviously you dive into the Akashic Records and helping people really understand what it is and how to access it and the gift of the records. But I love this component about understanding your soul plan, because I think sometimes we forget that we're a soul having this human experience in this physical form, and that we actually came here with a plan. So I would love to know, like, when did you have this realization or understanding, like, my soul has a plan, your soul has a plan, and I want to help share that with people?
Yeah, well, strangely, it's probably relatively recent that it kind of formulated in that sort of way. So I was 3 years old when I realized I was back in a body, and I could remember not being in a body. And so I had this kind of interesting juxtaposition in my little 3-year-old brain, thinking,
Oh, yeah.
holy moly, what am I doing here? And so I, of course, being human, struggled with all of those things for a lot of my life. But when I started to access the records, it really came to me uh, just naturally. I was working as an intuitive psychic reader, energy healer, and I started to get this big booming voice. And I think, wow, that is the best information I ever got for a client. Like, that was so much more than I don't think I was that really good of a psychic, but it was more, honestly, I'm a great Akashic reader, but psychic, but it wasn't like, it wasn't my niche. It was like, there was more for me to do. So they didn't want me to settle in. I'm just fine here. Right. So I get this big expanse of information about past lives and your soul contracts with people in this life, and the ones that you had, kind of the holdover from other lives, and how our past lives and this life relate. But it really wasn't until a few years ago when the record keeper said, like, let's write another book, and I'm like, okay, what are we writing about this time? And they were like, we want more people to understand really this truth, that you are this infinite soul having this human experience, and you've had hundreds and hundreds of other human experiences, and life is not random. So that means that before you embodied, you chose all sorts of aspects of your life, often your parents, the challenges they may be to you, right? The gifts and talents you want to bring to the world, the people you want to support and that are here to support you. So all of that information is part of what you planned. And so I think, kind of as I started to write the book, it coalesced into a more concise concept, right? And that's what they said to me. They said, well, many, many years ago, they said to me, will you help us bring the Akashic wisdom back to humanity? And 20 years ago, not many people had even heard of the Akashic Records.
No.
So when I talked about the records, people would, their eyes would glass over. They'd be like, I don't think I know what that is, and so it was a big project. When they asked me to help them, I thought, you guys are nuts. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and sure, I'll do my best. I'll give it a shot, whatever, I can do. I'm happy to help with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they've said it's time now. More and more and more people are conscious of what the Akashic Records are. And now it's time to bring it more mainstream. And this is how they gave it to me, so that it could make a lot more sense to a lot more people.
Yeah. So when you say they, I assume you're talking about the Akashic record keepers. And so for anybody that's listening, they're like, wait, what are they talking about? What are the Akashic records, and who are these record keepers? Because I mean, up until a couple of years ago, I certainly hadn't heard about it either. And I've only been recently, like last 6 months, really diving in and trying to understand it more. So if you could break it down for us, I think people would love that.
Absolutely. So the Akashic Records are the recording of your soul's journey through the time-space continuum, right? We could get esoteric and go, well, there really is no time. So, it's not a timeline. It is a quantum field of energy where everything is always happening. But all those lifetimes, all of those characters that you play here on Earth that we see in different time frames, works for our human brain. All of those stories, all of those lifetimes are recorded in this energy, etheric energy of the quantum field. And this area, the record keepers a long time ago said something like, the Akashic Records are stored in the information arm of Source. So if you imagine, Source is everything, and there is kind of a library section, then that's where your Akashic Records are stored. But everyone has their very own librarians. So you've got a library filled with thousands and thousands of books and beings of light to help support you to understand those books, to pull out the ones that might be useful for you to read. And so that is kind of an overview, right? A kind of a human concept. The library with the librarians, I think, works for us. And then the reason really, to me, that it's important for us to know about this and actually to access it is because of our soul plan. Because before we embodied, we thought, what patterns do I want to complete and really understand, learn, grow, and complete? We often call those karmic patterns. Or again, who do I want to support? Who do I want to, have as a significant partner? Or who might my parents be? What do I want to learn from them? What ancestral lineage do I want to be born into? Because there's energy in that lineage. Sometimes there's gifts, sometimes there's curses, honestly.
Yeah.
And we pick them for different reasons.
Yeah. I mean, I have always just been so fascinated with the intersection of your ancestry with your soul, sort of like the soul energy, the different lives and past lives and lifetimes, and how that as its own sort of entity, for lack of a better word, intersects with the ancestral lineage or family that you're born into. And what I've really enjoyed and what has really resonated with me so much about the Akashic Records and what you just shared is you come into this human form with a plan, things you want to work on, understand, learn about yourself, express. And you do that through connections and conflict or really good times with people. It really all serves a purpose, which goes back to what you were saying, that nothing in life is really random, but this idea that it's all energy, it's that information arm of Source. And then you've got these librarians that are just in service of you. I just think that is so cool because to me, it feels like it's more accessible. Like I'm not, like you and I are not sharing record keepers, they're just for me and they're here to help me, understand sort of the whys or the hows, which I feel are so, I feel like lately, like in the last year or two, those are the questions we have. Why and how?
Yeah. Yes. And, that is, I think, a big driving force for most people. I mean, maybe not everybody gets there or
Yeah.
has that experience, but, I think that so many people have that kind of, why am I here? Right? What is my purpose?
Yeah.
How do I do that? How do I actually create what I want to create? And along with that concept is like, what are my gifts and talents? What did I come to create?
Mm-hmm.
And so the interesting thing with the Akashic Records, again, is that there's so much information in there because you're really ancient.
Mm-hmm.
And I find, I love to teach people to access their own Akashic Records because it's such an empowerment tool, right? To be able to
Yeah.
go into your records whenever you want and ask, everyday questions. Of course, we ask those big questions like, help me understand, why I picked this crazy family, or, maybe why I was put up for adoption,
Mm-hmm.
or, why my marriage didn't work out, so there's really a lot of answers around that. It
Yeah.
may be because you wanted to learn about that experience. I mean, that's really why we come to Earth, is
Yeah.
to learn and have these challenging experiences teach us a lot. Easy experiences often, not so much, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not really learning anything when you're just having a lovely day at the beach. But, I mean, that's good too, but, right?
Yeah, no, it's different. I mean, I've really come to find that we are here to learn and grow as a soul. And so you
Yeah.
learn and grow through conflict, through challenges, through relationships. And I just think it's so interesting because you learn and grow from those experiences. But in some ways, it sounds like those experiences are sort of not planned necessarily, but kind of carved out for you to have that soul grow so that when you transition, and let's say you have another lifetime and you choose to do this again, maybe there are certain patterns or karmic patterns or relationships that you've healed, which will allow you to ascend and move on to the next lesson. And I'm curious because I know there's so much wisdom in our individual Akashic records. I mean, how does that work in terms of so we're in this human form now, and we
Right.
want to access our records to maybe get an understanding of a soul contract or a karmic relationship or something else in our lives that we're supposed to heal. Do the records give like direct guidance as to next steps to take? I mean, what does that really look like? Practically speaking,
Yes.
I guess.
Yeah. No, so it's, I mean, to me, they are very, they're very clear. The way I
Mhm.
teach people is to literally have a conversation with your record keepers. No, not everyone is clairaudient. Not everybody hears. Not everybody's clairvoyant, right? So we're not always seeing those images or pictures that they might be giving us. Many of us are very claircognizant, which really feels like, oh, I just know that.
Mm.
And I think for a lot of people, as powerful as claircognizance is, and one of my favorite gifts, it's probably the one that people are more challenged to trust,
Mm.
because it's just this like, I just know that. And then we're like, how do I know that? Maybe I made it up. Maybe it's not real, right?
Mhm.
So that brings
Yeah.
in a lot of doubt very often. And some people are very clairsentient, right? We're really more feeling, we're more, we get the emotions, we get the feelings, we even feel energy move around us. We can feel things clear or come into our field, but we don't have the clairaudience as much. We're not hearing.
Mhm.
But when we can get into a conversation with the Akashic Records, they can give us very specific, clear guidance.
And then really it's up to you to choose what you do with that
Right.
guidance, right? Which is
Right.
which is how it
Right.
always goes. I'm so curious because not it sounds like everyone has easy sort of access to their records, but I do know that wasn't there a time where the Akashic records were not accessible to humanity? Could we talk a little bit about
Yes.
that? Because isn't it more recent that we even have this ability to access our records?
Yes, absolutely. So about 1,000 years ago, back during the Dark Ages, which was around, 1,000 to I don't know how that long, 1200, 1400. I
Honestly,
think
what
they
is time
lasted.
anymore?
Right.
Sometimes I
Right.
don't know that we're in 2021. So
Right.
it's all good.
Right. But so we go 1,000 years ago,
Yeah.
people were the earth itself was actually in a very low vibration, probably one of our low peaks in history vibrationally. And that means that most of us were kind of out of integrity. There was not a lot of light here because really if you look at the more astrological aspect of it, which I don't really know a lot about astrology, but what I do know, the dark ages were created because astrologically we were in really a dark place in the connection to everything else. So right now we're in a much higher place because we're in more direct alignment to the galactic center, the galactic sun, to some really high vibrational energy that's now able to come in. But 1,000 years ago, we were totally blocked from all of that. So people misused the access to the Akashic Records. People had that access more easily, kind of for thousands of years. And then as people used it for their own personal gain, right, to win a war, to find somebody's, jewels or gold, the Akashic record keeper said, we can't kind of let this go on. They're misusing this, tool. And so they pulled the energy further away from the planet. So it's almost, I kind of always like, you couldn't jump and reach it anymore.
Yeah.
So for us now, we need to raise our vibration to be able to easily access the Akashic records. And when they pulled it away further, most people could not reach that far. They could not raise their vibration high enough. So the only people who could still access the records were the mystics, right? The healers, the seers, the wise women and men.
Yeah.
So now is time because galactically we're aligned and we're moving. It'll be a while, but we're moving into another golden age. That's kind of what like the dawning of the age of Aquarius is about.
Yeah.
It's about the alignment of the world. And I honestly believe, because I'm working on it even consciously, we are disconnecting, deprogramming, clearing old energies, old stories, old paradigms, old from all these old vibrations, like the old matrix. We need to disconnect from it so that we can lift the whole world up into a higher vibration. And that's kind of what going from the third dimension to the fourth dimension to the fifth dimension is about. It's really clearing that third dimensional trauma and drama and fear and pain so that we can raise our vibration higher and higher, and we can really transform our world into a heaven on earth.
I think it's really interesting what you shared about this element of being in our own integrity. I think more of us are really stepping forward in that level of integrity. And by what I mean by that is we are more excited or interested in this element of healing for ourselves so that it positively impacts others, it positively impacts the world and then future generations to come, which makes me think so much about this idea of your soul's path or understanding your purpose. For me, it just feels like the purpose is to really be here, to really get to know yourself on a deep fundamental level, to then be able to express what it is that you're here to express and learn and grow. And so I started having this idea a couple of years ago, which took so much pressure off of this sense of purpose, because you're right. I think you said this a little bit earlier. We are constantly asking ourselves, what is our purpose? What are we doing here? And when I have those thoughts, and that's really often when I feel very disconnected, I just continue to remind myself, I'm just here to be me and to learn and grow and hopefully have some fun along the way and meet great people. Wow, English is hard today. And meet great people along the way. But I think there's such a hyper focus on this sense of purpose, because I think for so long, for generations, it feels like we were disconnected from that. It was about survival. So much of life and lifetimes has been about survival. And I can't help but get the sense, hopefully as a collective, we're moving more so into expression as opposed to just survival.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I completely agree. And you're right. That's part of you know, really the last many thousands of years of life on the planet was really very much about survival.
Yeah.
And we've moved into a place where we have so much technology. We'll be bringing much more technology. I believe a lot of the new children who are being born without karma, and really are much more clear star seeds who will be like remembering and helping to create new aspects to work with, climate change
Mm-hmm.
and the water and the air, and really cleaning up the planet so that we can actually live and survive here, not just survive, but really thrive. Right.
Yeah.
And so, I believe that we're, finally in that place. And again, everything is divine timing, right?
Yeah.
When, we look at these old patterns. But one of the most important aspects the record keepers have always talked about is really living in your own integrity. And with the Akashic Records, that means you would never open the records of anyone else, right? Without their specific
Mm-hmm.
um, request, their pure consent,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's part of kind of the out of integrity aspect that people have often had. It's like, ooh, I can find out about that, I will, and now I know where their gold is buried, or whatever.
Yeah.
So as a humanity, really, we need to shift our focus. And I completely agree, back to community, away
Mm-hmm.
from me, which became so popular back in the 90s. and
Yeah.
and really back to community, supporting each other, um, you know saving our planet,
Yeah.
supporting our dear mother earth, and
Mm-hmm.
and all of these aspects. But kind of back to purpose, what the record keepers often say is really your purpose is to do the best you can to work through your soul's plan. So kind of
So
shifts it
good.
in a way,
Oh
right?
my
Because
God. Yeah.
man, you got 25, 50 soul contracts with people that you want to work through, and many of them are about support, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those gifts and talents, they're not a job description.
Mm.
um I did a reading yesterday, and just lovely woman who really had been very plagued by ancestral lineage issues. And so we cleared a lot of that out, and cleared a lot of the old, really, energy of curses, which is phenomenal, how kind of prevalent it is in the world still.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But she was like, I need a job. What kind of job should I get? And it was interesting because the record keepers were like, you're here to share your light. And what I'm hearing is doing something like, working in a service business. And you might be a receptionist at a hotel, or at a bank, or work with preschool children. I mean, these were kind of the, you know, but somehow it's like she wanted me to tell her where to go and get that job.
Like what website to go on, where to log in, what to sign
Right.
up, how to apply. Yeah, I get it. But
Yeah,
I
and
love what
it's
you're
free
saying.
will.
Yeah.
Right, we have
Yeah.
free will, and you may love children, or I've said, sometimes this preschool thing will come through occasionally, and this woman was like, oh, I love children, I don't know that I could get a job because I'm not a teacher. I'm like, well, you have to reach out, and maybe you get a job and you volunteer a little bit, and they like you and they hire you as the secretary, or
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
You
it's
just
a
never know
process.
what will
We
come
have
from
to
something.
step by
Yeah.
step by step, we have to take a step down that road, not decide, oh, they won't hire me, I'm not even going to call them.
Mm.
Right. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's kind of that mindset is what holds us back. So
Yeah, it's just about being open,
yep,
right? It's just about being open.
willing.
It may not look like what you envisioned. You may have
Right.
some resistance, but being open and willing to sort of walk forward in whatever the guidance is, it sounds like, because I found this too. I'll have moments where someone will suggest something to me either in a healing session or just in conversation with a friend, and the resistant wall comes up. You're like, oh no, I
Right.
can't do that. They won't say yes, or I'll never get that job. But the minute I do say yes, which takes courage, I'm not going to lie, sometimes you get in your own head and your fear and resistance and everything else in between. It's not so much that that thing they suggested worked out. but it's the experience I had along the way, the people I met, what I
Mm.
learned about myself. And for me, that feels like the nugget of wisdom. Like that feels like the gold is kind of what you sort of gain along the way, the moment you're sort of willing to say yes, which for a lot of
Yeah.
us is not always easy. That first initial yes of like letting your guard down and allowing yourself to walk forward. Because I'm curious what you think too. I sometimes feel like the fear, the resistance, the anger, or whatever emotion appears, that's actually what you're meant to work through to heal. It's not so much the end goal. It's really that emotional aspect that you're supposed to face, recognize, move through that you really get the biggest healing from.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. And that's, these are these challenges. And then to me, a lot of times the excitement is right what happens serendipitously, right?
Yes.
So, you say yes. I remember um the first book, I was actually working on something that was more autobiographical. I had started it 4 years earlier. I had joined a kind of get your book done group. And the reason I joined the group was I needed a deadline. I was in advertising in production for 15 years. So I'm really
Mm,
good with a deadline.
yeah. Yeah.
But if I don't have one, right, forget it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I joined the group because they had a deadline, and the deadline was a contest. And it was like, okay, you write a book. I'm totally drawing a blank on what they call it, proposal, a book
Yes. A
proposal.
book
So it's
proposal.
not the complete book. You do a specific book proposal. You put your book proposal in by this deadline. And then it was a contest and you could win something. And
Mm,
I didn't care about winning. I only cared about getting the book proposal done. So while I was in that process, the record keeper said, write the second book. And I'm like, what? What are you talking about? I'm hard pressed to get one done. And so somebody asked the coach, how many book proposals can you put into the contest? And she said 2. And so it's like, okay. So, I hands on hips, I'm like, okay, how? Tell me how. And they really
mm,
gave me really specific directions. 2 simple steps. Call this person, transcribe this class, get them to help you. And I thought, oh, good, they'll never do it. They'll never help me. So I'm totally off the hook. But I was willing to call the person up and go, hey, would you help me? And she said, it's so funny. I was just thinking yesterday that it would be really cool to work on another book.
oh
I
my
haven't worked
gosh.
on a book in a while. And I was like, she's like, yes. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Divine timing. Wow.
There it was. It's all the world orchestrates itself to step
Yeah.
up when you step up. Right.
Mm.
And so we got the 2 book proposals in. And then the biggest shock was the fact that I actually won the first prize.
Oh, how
And
cool.
I was not even, like thinking about, prizes at all. And I won an agent who got me a publishing deal.
Wow. Which is so in line with what your record keepers were sharing with you about it's you need to write a book, you need to write a book.
Right.
Wow. You
Yeah.
just never know
Yeah.
when something is going to show up and come your way. So I've
Yeah.
got some like fundamental type questions for you about the records
Okay.
that keep popping in my head that I realize we haven't talked about or answered for people. So the record keepers, are they souls that ever embody a physical or human form, or are they just record keepers?
Well, while they're record keepers, they're really pure souls that have never embodied. And
Mm,
so the way the record keepers explain it is it's like we embody it and then we go on a journey. And some souls go, oh, I think I'll go work in the Akashic Library and learn more about what's going on out there in the world.
mm-hmm.
So they are pure souls. They have no judgment. They've never been human. They don't have any of our garbage, which is, I think, really super important to know, because
Yeah.
really the truth is that they're here to support you. They're pure divine source energy. They are
Mm,
pure love. And that's what it feels like when you go into your records. Because sometimes people are like, oh, I'm nervous. I'm afraid that I've been a terrible person, or I'm afraid what they'll tell me. But the truth is, they're just here to love you and support you and help you on your journey.
No judgment. It's all
No
about that
judgment.
pure love. Okay. All right. That's so fascinating. I guess the other thing I wanted to ask you is, so when you are in your records, when you're accessing your records, what does it feel like? Like, does it feel like, how you and I are speaking to each other right now? I'm just curious if
Yeah.
there's a sort of shift in energy, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe that's a good way to put it.
Yes, it's a great way to put it, and a great question. So it's a process again. So I'm in my records now. I'm in my records most of the time. If I work with a client, if I'm doing a one-on-one session, of course, I'm going to open their records and move into
Right.
that energy. But I kind of live in that vibration. So, of course, when I'm doing an interview, I'm kind of following their guidance, their input.
Hmm.
And so, so after practice for a lot of years, you can kind of live in that vibration. But for most of us, when we start, we have that experience. Sometimes we feel the energy shift. Sometimes it's kind of like a light goes on. You might imagine some kind of library or some kind of ancient guides. You might, feel swirly energy, cool energy, heat. So people have very
Hmm.
physical sensations sometimes if you're really more clairsentient. Again, if you're more clairaudient, you might actually hear them speaking to you.
Hmm.
So I always teach my students to ask questions and kind of get out of your own way and just write down your answers, because we're not all clairvoyant. We are very clairaudient in a most of us hear in our own head with our own voice.
Yes.
So it's not like a big booming voice, right? So
Yeah.
when we just write it down, we can be like, oh, I wouldn't have said that.
Or
I
said
don't
it that
talk that
way.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's very cool. I think it sounds like it's about really, when you're in your records, trusting what you're experiencing, sensing, hearing, and just what you said, get out of your own way and write it down. And
Right.
I know you talk
Absolutely.
about this in what's going to be your newest book, and then in your other books too. So much of your work is about teaching others how to access their own records. And I'm going to point everybody, well, everyone listening, check out our show notes that has all Lisa's beautiful books in it. But I know it's a process. There's a sacred prayer at the beginning. You teach people to ask very pointed questions. Could we just give people a little bit of a sense of maybe what that is, because it's very different from just getting on the phone with a medium or an intuitive, and you give them permission to access or read your energy, and then you sort of dive in. So this is a bit of a I feel like it's a slightly different process, but very similar too.
Yes. Yes. So because we're going into this very specific, information arm of source energy, you're actually having to shift into the quantum field of source. It's a very high vibration. So the record keepers have given me a simple 5-step wisdom prayer system.
Hmm.
And so we do set our intention to start with to be an open, clear channel for this light, for our own Akashic information. And then the record keepers have given me a half a dozen access prayers, because different ones are going to resonate with different people.
Yeah.
We're very unique. We've lived in all sorts of worlds and dimensions. And so, one prayer might not resonate with you where another one will. And so I teach an online workshop, and we go through and we try on each of the prayers in the workshop and see which one resonates the most with us. And then we start to practice using that prayer. And it is very specific about asking specific questions for yourself. Again, I teach people to just get out of your head. I even teach tools, how to turn your analyzer off, how to get out of your head, how to
Mm-hmm.
get more fully embodied, all, creating boundaries, all these aspects. are very helpful in being able to access this source vibration of the Akashic field.
Hmm.
And so we do spend time in the workshop and, asking questions. I have exercises every time. And then, of course, at the end, we always fill ourselves up with our highest Akashic energy that we can hold. Because when we clear or move old energy out of our field, it's important to fill yourself up with your highest vibrational Akashic wisdom and light, your highest soul energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not somebody else's energy coming
No,
in,
it's
right?
your own. Yeah.
Always your own. So that's very important. So we have that as one of the steps, and then closing and locking your records. So then you can kind of go on with your day and you're not
Mm-hmm.
tired or spaced out.
Yeah.
And so,
Regrounding yourself in that moment after you've accessed
right.
your records. Thank you for sharing all of that, because I think not only is the Akashic Record something that a lot of people aren't familiar with, but this process of accessing your records is also something that, for me, until I started diving in, I was like, well, what do you mean? How do I access this? And then it starts to make sense. There's this real process, and it sounds like it's a really beautiful opportunity to connect, to tap in, and so much of it feels like it's about being present in the moment too, which so much of us need more of. So much more opportunity just to be present in the moment. All right, last kind of like fundamental type question I want to ask you. We've been talking about soul contracts throughout this entire conversation. So could you just share with people, like, what are soul contracts if they're not familiar? And then do we have a certain number of soul contracts when we come into this physical form?
Yeah, good question. So I would say that most of us write 25 to 50 soul contracts, and some of it depends on, again, that whole plan. Some of us are more, live a little bit more solo life, right? Some
Yeah.
people don't marry or have children, things like that. So you wouldn't have those added on contracts. Some of us really come to hold an energy and live a maybe a little bit more of a hermetic or monastic type life. It's not as common in the world now, but enough on a spiritual path. I see enough people doing that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we write, so the average person might write 40 or 50 contracts. And so we would write like a half a dozen or a dozen contracts for significant partners. Because of course, remember, you had your first whatever, boyfriend, girlfriend, when you were in high school or in college, and then maybe you marry or maybe you don't, whatever goes on with your life. But we want to have a chance to find those people, because we move around a lot, right? In the olden
Yeah.
days, you might be born and die in the same village and never go further than 10 miles away. Whereas now, we might be born in the United States and go live in Europe. One of my daughters is going to college in
Oh,
Scotland. I'm
wow.
like, oh, I hope she comes home, but who knows? She might not. Who knows? What if she might marry somebody
You
over
never
there? She might have
know.
a soul contract with somebody who lives in Europe, right? So, so we write a lot.
Mm-hmm.
We don't fulfill them all, but we do often fulfill, quite a few of them. Many
Yeah.
of them have karma attached, which means those are the more challenging relationships that we want to learn around. We want to understand that person. We want to understand our relationship, what is blocking us from connecting more deeply or seeing eye to eye, whatever our story might be. And so we write quite a few of those because, again, our point here to come to Earth is about soul growth. And that
Mm-hmm.
means we have challenges so that we can learn and we can grow. And then
Yeah.
often we can share those gifts with other people. And so the good news is we also write many just support contracts. I'm here to support you and you're here to support me. And it's always lovely if that's your significant partner or your parent or your child, but
Mm-hmm.
it's not always, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
So I'm
and if
curious
it's
this
not,
out. Oh,
it's
go ahead. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's okay. No, I was just going to say, if we have like challenging parents, it's not because we've done anything wrong. It's because there is a lesson there that we wanted to learn. And the other thing I often see is that we volunteered to support those people with some of their challenges. So say you're born into a family of alcoholics, and you may have said, I'm going to show up and I'm going to be such a bright light that they're going to quit drinking so that we can all be together and be a happy family. And that may or may not happen, right? So, but we as a soul may say, I want to be there for those people because they're, say, maybe someone from my soul family that chose to have this experience. And it may go back further and further, right? The original experience may have been the mother had been abused by the grandfather. And so she took to drinking and blocking things out. And you said, I'm going to come in and help that woman who I love so dearly, that soul that I love so dearly. And so we may choose to be born into a family in that sort of way. And, you know, sometimes to end something, like to not pass that gene on, to not become an alcoholic ourselves, or not pass on the abuse that might have been coming down through that ancestral lineage. And so we step into challenges also, really to be that person who transforms or transmutes that old energy, and so it doesn't go on any further.
That is such a wonderful explanation. Thank you for that. And I love what you shared too. There's soul contracts, there are also support contracts, and then there's this element of karma too. Is there a certain number of like past or lives in general that it takes to move through specific karma? Like, is it hundreds? Is it 15? I mean, is there like an average number? I think this is just so interesting.
I'm going to say average is something like 400 to 800 lives. So it's a big average, right?
Huge.
So it's not 10, it's not 20. And of course, you know, you're working through patterns, but we often will, you know, maybe we'll do some work around abandonment, and then we'll have some really different kinds of lives. So we don't just work on abandonment for 20 lifetimes. We, you know, kind of, it rolls in all sorts of different patterns. And often we'll have, say, maybe I'm working on abandonment and abundance in this lifetime. So I've got some abandonment issues from my childhood, and I've got some money blocks from my childhood. And so I'm working on both of those aspects, and so maybe we end up doing a lot of ancestral lineage work because of these two aspects. And maybe we end up doing a bunch of work around past lives where we took vows of poverty, or we got killed because someone stole our money and they, you know, killed us in the process. And again, abandonment can relate in those same ways, past lives, you know, lifetimes where people died and left us. Our parents died of the plague and we were left, you know, we were one, right? So all sorts of kind of interesting stories out there. We live, you know, crazy lives. So for most of us humans, the record keepers say it takes most of us 600 to 800 lives to kind of work through all the stories and patterns and levels and layers
and really heal it.
That we,
Wow. Okay. I could talk to you forever. Like, this has been such a wonderful conversation. And I just have learned so much, and just so grateful for this conversation and your time. I think the last thing I would love to ask you is, I know you shared in your records right now. Is there anything that the Akasha maybe wants to share or explain, or I don't know, about what we're experiencing right now, this time that we're in? I think, I would love to know if that's something that's top of mind.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's see what they want to share. They really have a message of hope. So what they're saying is, as challenging as the world looks right now, this is kind of a process of clearing and releasing the dark energy and dark patterns that have been here for thousands and thousands of years. And as that comes up, it needs to be seen so we can change it, so we can make new choices, so that we can, you know, become aware and heal it, you know, make new choices and move through it. So we're in that very challenging moment of seeing all of the dark, all of the messed up systems, all of the, patterns that have been needing to be cleared for, like I say, thousands and thousands of years.
Yeah.
So, but they're saying we're moving through, we are on a higher timeline. We are on a trajectory to really heal this. Might be 10 years, 20 years, 40 years, 50 years. I have no idea, because again, free will, humans, right? So we get, but it is really, in really perfect divine right order. And they just really want everyone to know, just stay in your heart, stay knowing that we are on the perfect path, that we really are doing our work. And everyone who can do whatever, whether it's meditate, do some of these big group meditations are always powerful and beautiful to help us to heal the humanity. Do your own personal work. Learn to access your own Akashic records, move into the energy and the wisdom with us, is what they're saying, with them. And just kind of stay positive. That doesn't mean we have to pretend and be Pollyannish, but stay positive and know that we really are moving up.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, because I think it is about recognizing what we see around us, but allowing ourselves to maintain that level of hope, faith, our own practice within it, which will only help, it won't hurt. So, Lisa, this has been so good. I'm so happy you came on the podcast. So could you share with everyone where they can find you, learn from you, work with you, your books, everything, connect with you and learn some more?
Absolutely. So my website is akashicknowing.com. And I know you'll have this in the show notes, but you can find my online workshops, which I teach 3 times a year right now, usually September, February, and June, something like that. So if you're interested, check out my website for the next live workshop. And I also have home study classes, because, if it's December and you don't want to wait till February, you could just jump in and download the whole workshop and do it on your own. And of course, my books are on my website also, but they're also on Amazon. So you could look up, Lisa Barnett, and The Infinite Wisdom of the Akashic Records is my how-to book. It's a great place to start if you think you want to learn to access your own Akashic records. You can read the book. There's the, I think 3 of the sacred access prayers. You can, start to do it and see how that feels for you. And then, sometimes people are like, great, I get it. And sometimes people are like, I need a little more help and support. I add a lot more guided meditations, visualizations, tools in the live class, right? Easier to do than in a book. And the other great book to start with, I think, for most people right now, is From Questioning to Knowing. It has 73 healing prayers to help you transform your life. So it's a great place to understand about our family lineage, why we pick these crazy families, how we can help to clear these old karmic patterns, how forgiveness can really help clear karma. So 73 prayers. There's one for almost everything.
Oh, amazing. Okay. So everything, it'll go in the show notes. It'll be so easy for everyone to access and connect with you and learn more. And I mean, I've taken so much from this conversation, but it has really solidified for me, I think, this knowing that we're here to learn and grow, and that we're this infinite soul that just, we're embodied in this lifetime, and understanding your purpose in is really about tapping into your soul's plan. And what a beautiful way to do that through the Akashic Records. So Lisa, thank you. This was really wonderful.
Thank you, Sydney. It was a joy.
Seek the Joy podcast is a production of Seek the Joy Media and created, produced, and hosted by me, Sydney Weiss. You can tune into all of our episodes on your favorite podcast platform. And if you're enjoying the show, hit follow and leave us a 5-star rating and review. Make sure to join the community, join the conversation on our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. We are at Seek the Joy Podcast everywhere. And don't forget, you can actually watch today's new episode and all of our episodes on our brand new YouTube channel. Click that link in the show notes to subscribe and tune in. As always, thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And I'll see you right back here next week for another Seek the Joy Tuesday.